Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bridge broadcast. This is episode 11. We've got our good friend Sam Angelotta from Chicago. He's with an organization called OWLS Lacrosse, very similar to Bridge. You'll hear a great discussion about some of the similarities and the differences between our two organizations, our two cities. So hang tight, this is a lot of fun. Enjoy. How is everything in quarantine?
It's good. I'm fine. I mean, all the cliches, just grateful, to have, work and more family time. And I think it's, the world is paused. So seems like the right time for self-evaluation, for, business evaluation and just take them, stop and smell the roses. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Got to be a little easier than to raise a kiddo, a newborn, or
Yeah, I have a background in early childhood elementary. So when I first started, I was a preschool teacher. So I have some of that, ammunition.
You're like, I'm going to crush this, like, raising a kid thing.
Yeah, I can make sensory bins and do sing-alongs. I got my ukulele. It's a good time. And she's a cool kid and an easy baby.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this whole thing, we those of us in these privileged situations, we're constantly thinking about the people that are facing tremendous challenges. So that's been the tough part. And look, I think it's okay to be a little bit selfish in these times with, I just feel like crap. This sucks. This totally sucks. There's no way around it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of honesty that we kind of have to address in terms of like what we see in the world and then what we're kind of experiencing ourselves, right?
Right.
And we have a lot more time to evaluate it too. I mean, rather than just sort of brush stuff aside, it's like, I guess I could, like you said, self-evaluate.
Sure. And look, I'm not sitting here learning how to speak Spanish or playing a new instrument or
I'm not learning how to code and
no, I think in many ways the move right now is to kind of, do nothing in a lot of ways and sometimes say nothing. It'd be nice if other people said nothing. I know you're in Texas, so I'll take it easy.
Yeah, come on, man. Yeah, you want to kick us off, do a little pseudo intro bio?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Sam Angelotta, founder, executive director of Outreach with Lacrosse in Schools, otherwise known as OWLS. We are a Chicago-based nonprofit, sports-based youth development organization, similar to our peer organization, Bridge Lacrosse. Our brother,
Big brother.
South. Yeah, little look. We're representing the Central Time Zone. Okay.
Yeah, true story.
Yeah, we cut it right down the middle. We're always looking to you guys for ideas and certainly structure. When this thing started off, I was coming back from the UK. I did the local development officer position over there for English Lacrosse Association, growing the game in Manchester, England. And I found that basically that model is, you have the club model reigns supreme in Europe. So, the idea of University of Texas versus Oklahoma football game having 100,000 people at the game is mind-blowing to Europeans who don't really have school sports and
right.
college teams. Maybe I imagine like Oxford has a big rowing program, but outside of that,
their equestrian team is top notch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the club model is the way it works over there, and whereas big club soccer teams have huge organizations, and even those professional teams have U12s, U14s, all the way up. The same way it works with almost every sport there, including lacrosse, which has an interesting history over there that's over 100 years. And so I was assigned to Manchester Waconians, which is an old team in Manchester. Manchester, for whatever reason, is the hub of European lacrosse, really.
Oh, nice.
And I got assigned to a club team to play. And then throughout the week, would go to primary schools with a bag of lacrosse sticks and pop-up goals and be basically like an adjunct PE teacher, teaching lacrosse for an hour or so at 8 different schools. From there, we'd attempt to. The idea was you get kids to sign on to your club team. And while I was not, I'm a MCLA dirt kicker like you,
Yeah.
so I was not a great player, but I had success. And I was lucky to get into that program. I played lacrosse at Indiana under Matt Carwick, who's now at Colgate, and he really got me into the program. They weren't going to take me, but I found that I had joy and some success in youth coaching and recruiting kids to play.
What's the demographic of these kids you're recruiting?
It was a range, but it's certainly not like where I'm at in the west side and south side of Chicago now. However, there were parallels in that, first of all, mostly working class, I would say. That was the makeup of my teammates too. It was interesting to play for a team where you'd have a guy that was, an 18-year-old kid working at a movie theater, and you'd have a guy that's, 35, 40 years old that's like a pipe fitter. It was cool. I mean, the people there were just so down to earth and, crummy weather. So you're inside having great conversations for the most part. And kids themselves were working class. It's Manchester, it's blue collar. There were different neighborhoods just like anywhere else where you'd have sort of a more of an upper class or middle class, right. But then very much like working class kids. And there's some tougher areas as well. That was sort of like those kids. It's funny you say that because those kids that were, maybe had more challenging lives were the kids that I gravitated towards working with because their resiliency, their passion, everything sort of showed itself. And the successes were, and they were, more frustrated when they weren't doing well. Overcoming those humps were gratifying as a coach. But anyhow, that was, I was working in schools too. So something in that mix, that makeup, I, spurred on ideas about starting a program like that or connecting myself with programs like that. So that was my segue into education and into starting a program with OWLS. So came back to Chicago. Again, I went to IU from Cleveland and knew I wasn't going to be in Cleveland, but I knew I wasn't going to be, in New York or out west or anything like that. So Chicago is a pretty big landing spot for all the Big Ten. And I had my girlfriend at the time, future wife, waiting here, and my sister. So I have family here. So yeah, this was a landing spot. And I came here and started a 2-year education master's program and, learn the landscape of the challenges that Chicago youth are facing, not only with the education gap, but with, the overarching issues of, violence and poverty really crippling the west side and south side. And things like that I really responded to was like research coming out of the Erickson Institute here, which is like a child development research, sort of like university facility. It's truly an institution. But things like institutionalized childhood, where, you have these kids in tight spaces with limited places to play and going to, overcrowded classrooms, and then at best an after school program that tells them to sit there and do their homework. It is so apparent that, the ability to play, just not even a sport, but just play, is in many ways how kids, especially at an early age, grow and learn. So, taking some of those ideas I really responded to. And, however, it wasn't like there was just funds waiting for me to start, a lacrosse program like that. So I got a teaching job first at a school where they allowed me to start the program. That was St. Malachy on the near west side of Chicago, very close to the United Center. Similar to Manchester, where, you had Manchester United, Manchester City sort of shadowing over the city, and kids that just want to play soccer or more traditional sports like rugby. We have those same challenges. Obviously, you do as well with, football, basketball. I noticed when I started the program that, we were attracting a lot of kids that never played a sport before. Even within the basketball, football programs at the schools that we're at, or the park districts or the community centers, they're very underfunded. So it's very limited who can participate, how it's presented to kids. So even those programs aren't always the highest quality across the board, across all the schools that I was seeing in low-income areas, a lack of not only quality athletic programs, just enrichment programs, music, arts, things like that. So
Yeah, for sure.
I think that is sort of, flash forwarding to why we're so, we try to be, and you guys do the same thing, holistic in everything that we do. So got a teaching job. I was a preschool teacher for 2 years. It was insane. I had 25, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in under-resourced, overcrowded classroom, full day preschool, and, kids from very challenging backgrounds. So that was truly life lessons. And then after school, I'd run the program for, 4th through 8th graders. Wild. I mean, I just kind of learned the lacrosse ecosystem around here at the same time. Got a coaching job at St. Ignatius College Prep, coached a little bit of club lacrosse, and just to kind of meet people and rally the troops a little bit, get gear donations going for our OWLS kids.
What's the time period are we talking about right now?
2011.
Okay.
Yeah, did just kind of grassroots at that school, and we'd go around to like clinics and things like that, and it was a little weird. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it was like our kids are in donated gear. We didn't even have jerseys. They're in their like school clothes underneath. And we're going to suburbs for like clinics, and couldn't even really play games because the skill level was just there was just such a disparity there. So, we do like the mixed game type thing and clinic, and it felt a little, I'll just be straight up, like kind of like a pony show in many ways. So
But the value is not for your kids; it's for the suburban kids running the clinic.
and God bless those kids. It was everyone. It was well intentioned all the way around.
Certainly.
And there was budget challenges there too. We'd have, my kids, almost entirely single parents, or single family homes, single parent homes, sorry, and very limited travel resources. And a lot of the lacrosse happening was in the suburbs here at the time. From that standpoint, it was tough to pull any of that stuff off. So, how do we get beyond just like practices in this yard across the school that we were at? So over time in that first 2-3 years, a couple of the neighboring schools that were connected with St. Malachy, saw what we were doing and they wanted to get involved. So that became the basis for our OWLS League, sort of in-house league. And it was about, building competition from within the community. I think in a lot of ways there can be, of course, we want to bridge the educational gap. Of course, we want our kids to, have the opportunity to go to the best possible schools.
Yeah.
And we do that, through our academy program now, which is really launched in 2018 as our scholarship program, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But those are, of course, things that we value. But at the same time, I'd say equally as important is not just like, how are we getting kids, quote unquote, out of the hood, right? It's what are we also putting back in? And how are we strengthening the community by, just filling these parks with positive quality programming, open to parents and community members that don't know about lacrosse? That's so important too. We found that that's really sort of our identity too. It's really, strength in Chicago. That's our hashtag, if you will. We found that was really the way to go. And then we could still, our kids would get a little bit better. The competition was more fun and fair. And then we do have kids rising to higher levels of play to the point where we are playing with and against, club teams, other kids from the surrounding area. So that was sort of the genesis of it and the evolution of it. Switched to, it took over the school at the same time. So we're doing it, basically every kid at the school is playing lacrosse in some fashion, whether it's in PE class or after school. It's a small school. I mean, there's probably 200 kids. But yeah, then we added these 2 other schools, and I became the athletic director in like 2014 or something like that, which didn't exist. Most schools, west side, south side of Chicago, K through 8, whatever, even many high schools don't have athletic directors, don't have those positions. So we created it, which was pretty cool. Created that position, and, to earn my keep, I had to teach about 35 PE classes a week, pre-K through 8. Yeah. And run the program. But I was loving it because you heard that preschool, the specs on that preschool class, that was, 2 years, was twice as long than many.
You needed a change of pace there.
Yeah, and it was just, it fit better. It fit my areas of interest and expertise a little bit better.
Right.
So did that, and then OWLS continued to grow. And then we started seeing kids going to college prep, high schools and having some success, but really couldn't put we had to kind of galvanize those resources. Like, why are they having success? Or, on the opposite side, if we're sending, I was getting kids into pretty good prep schools, but then they were having troubles academically because of the shift in academic standards. So
Right.
that's really, when I went full time, 2016, we had a, stronger foundation, stronger board, and I was burning the candle at both ends. And, can't put your full passion into one thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, what are you going to do? So
Yeah, for sure.
You got to go full time. But I think it was necessary to go through those years of teaching to understand the community, understand the challenges that the education system in Chicago has, which is very deep. So yeah, full time 2016. And since then I haven't looked back, and we've been, slowly, steadily growing from our ability to support kids and add programs and get more kids playing lacrosse. And, we were able to redefine our model, which is like an introductory program in third grade. It's our outreach program. The league program became that sort of, if you're a third, fourth grader, you're playing 3-on-3 speed lacrosse. If you're in the middle school program, you're playing in a Saturday league. Our girls just started a new league they were going to start a new league this spring until COVID hit. And then from there, that third piece is the academy program, which is, to be honest with you, very, very few of our conversations have to do with lacrosse. It's about mentorship. It's about academic achievement. So those are our kids that we found. I'm like, there's these kids that are like middle schoolers through high school that are just, this is it. This is their program. This is their thing. And
these are your core kids.
Your core kids, and they're year round, and we're doing all these things with them. Like, let's define that, right? Let's define it. So it's a select program. It's high standards. It's essentially year round with, different seasons. And it's centered around, these academic workshops and enrichment experiences, like, like you guys do, going to like outdoor type adventures and see what's outside your neighborhood is so key. I mean, giving, it's one thing to just, say like, work really hard and studying, hit the wall and work really hard at lacrosse. If you don't have like a reason to like look forward to something, then
there needs to be some structure around it.
There needs to be
to where kids feel like they're in something.
Right. And it needs to be open to like all interest areas, but also focused too. So, our enrichment trips are usually, something like outdoorsy and fun, or something like a museum visit or a college visit, right? So not say like, like when we visit Notre Dame, we understand that that's one of the hardest schools to get into in the country, but it's not like, one, the day is just fun because it's like a beautiful campus and they have cool stuff, right? But two, it's like, these are the types of universities. So not only do we go there, we also go to like Concordia University in Chicago, which is like a small D3 local, not quite city, but not quite fully like rural college campus. So trying to give a range and for those kids. And, as I mentioned, a lot of our kids are going to stay in, in their neighborhoods. So, we've been growing the number of kids that are at college prep private schools. We've also been creating, work and service opportunities for our high schoolers that are at high schools that don't have lacrosse, opportunities for heightened lacrosse experiences and club-like play. So that's important too.
I'm pretty jealous of your academy. It's something that we struggle with because for us, a lot of our kids, it's kind of a la carte with our programs. It's like, I'll do summer, I'll do spring lacrosse, and then I might do this program in the summer. I'll be back for fall, but kind of in and out. I mean, this is something that you have to have kids like bought in all the way.
What's the high school, like the middle school to high school transition though? Because a lot of our academy program has to do with the utter lack of choices for high schools for our kids. And it's very much catered to the Chicago ecosystem, right? So, in order to go to a Loyola here or, a selective enrollment public school like Lane Tech that's by me, these are really hard to, almost impossible for many of our kids in their situations to get into on their own. And I don't know. So what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, that transition from middle school to high school.
Yeah.
For us, it's pretty seamless. Like we don't really see there's not a big gap there, I guess. Maybe like with you guys. A lot of our kids have a track from middle school. They kind of know where they're going to go to high school. A lot of high schools here that they want to go to are, relatively accessible, or there's a lot of options, right? So there's a handful of pretty good charter schools here, handful of magnets. because everyone in Dallas or like, the area has a car or some legitimate form of transportation, we have kids who go to school 15 miles away from where they live. A lot of districts opened up their campuses essentially and said, hey, if you want to be here, we'll make it possible or find a way to make it possible.
Yeah, like I said though, for us we kind of had to, because what I was noticing is that we were losing kids because of way our pre going full time pre academy, we were losing kids in ninth grade and beyond because they weren't, if they don't go to one of these 16 schools in the city that have lacrosse, which that's it. It's like
Hmm.
probably now it's probably like 20. Okay, and by the way, they're the hardest schools to get into in the city, and you're going from CPS or whatever, even in like St. Malachy, which is a private, quote unquote, private school, but it's 100% low income, right? The academic standards in those K through 8 situations make it impossible to get into those schools without, you have the brainiac type kids or whatever, but or someone that really has a champion. Without intervention, it's almost impossible to get into those schools. So if they wanted to continue playing lacrosse, which is like obviously our all of our shared, tool for engagement with kids, it's like, what's the point if they're going to stop at eighth grade? And, simultaneously, that becomes the age range. Now, I found that these challenges with kids that are dealing with PTSD and very traumatic situations, given the, ecological challenges of Chicago, I found that stuff actually, I think initially when I started at St. Malachy, I'm like, I'm going to take these middle schoolers and they're going to love lacrosse and go. And, I had one or two kids that did. For the most part, they're like, nah. In many ways, they're set in their ways already and have lived a lot of life by the time they're 12, 13, whatever years old. A lot of those, changes and identity type things happen much earlier. So I found that like, and I've seen you guys too going earlier and earlier in your programming options, because you take that pile of lacrosse sticks, whereas I gave it to the middle schoolers and they're like, nah, this isn't that cool. Like, look, I'm trying to like be cool here.
There is some value in starting them young, quote unquote.
The third and fourth graders are like, let's go.
Yeah.
At least here in Chicago, that's what it was. That's what I found just by trial and error. If we wanted them to keep playing, we had to have an option for them to, play at these high schools. But, we could start a club team, and we're doing some in-house type of plans for that again that got put on hold due to COVID. But I really think, for us at least, it was like, these are the at-risk times, ages 15 to 24, where, unfortunately, jail cells in Chicago are being filled with young men and women at that age. And we don't have a continued option for them, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade through life. Unfortunately, we're gonna have a lot of kids that we lose and, have.
Yeah. You do then have this plan or, somewhere down the future that there is going to be within OWLS, within your organization, there is some linear progression that someone can come in at whatever age group, pretty young, and then graduate high school and maybe even beyond.
Right.
Yeah. And that's something that we recognize pretty, not early, but we did recognize that we needed to do that. We were kind of losing kids too because of the middle school drop off, because in some aspects of Chicago, there just weren't options for kids to play lacrosse. So we sort of centralized into a community-based organization, said, if you can find a way to make it to us, which for some kids, that's a struggle and that's a barrier of entry. But for those who maybe have that resource, we'll give you a track to continue with our organization and then graduate as a student athlete. So that's always been kind of in our mindset.
Because you've explained this to me before, and I still don't get it, how like high school lacrosse is works in Texas.
It's a club sport. It is not a sanctioned sport.
That's good for you guys.
It's great for us. It's honestly what, because there's some discussions about sanctioning the sport of lacrosse, and that would hurt us. But and to some degree, because the other thing too is a lot of the schools that would sanction right away, we're not pulling kids from, right? It's the suburban schools, it's private schools, ones with resources. A lot of the schools that we pull kids from, they're not going to pick up lacrosse terribly soon, right? Whether it's budget, whether it's cultural, it's just not going to be something that the governing body of Texas sports is not going to mandate lower income or Title I schools to have lacrosse, right? If they can barely afford to field a volleyball team or soccer team and things like that. Right. So whatever that format looks like for us, we're making it work. We're a community-based program. Kids come from us, and we're in the league as, just this, to some degree, an outlier type of program because we're not school-based, right? We have kids so I have 200 kids had 200 kids in the spring season, and they came from 90 different schools. So we're not,
How many?
90 schools.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah, the geographic range is
That's so awesome.
it's pretty crazy. That being said, though, I would like to be more honed in on a few neighborhoods.
Though, I've been following you guys for a long time, and I think, whatever you said, academy, jealousy, whatever. Like, I look to you guys for just the structure, and I can't put my finger on it, but first of all, you're just super organized, and you're going to fight me back on that, but you are. And I've always, valued the way you kind of approach things. And it seems like everything seamlessly moves forward, even when you add a new program, and it's like all of a sudden, you have I actually wrote these down, the platypus, the tigers, and the troll. And the Angelotta are like a summer camp. This is so Bridge. Like, and what that says is, you can't really put your finger on it, but it is your culture. And like, I'm not gonna say brand, but like,
please don't.
Yeah, I won't. But there's something about it that every program that you guys run feels like you can tell it's Bridge Lacrosse. And
yeah, I appreciate that. I think where I looked at other organizations, whether it's, lacrosse organizations like us or just other youth nonprofits, is that there is this structure where you always have this core group of kids that sort of moves with you year round, right? And to some degree, we're more a la carte. And I think that's just based on the demographic that we serve. It's based on just the geography of the city, right? So if you're a kid in one of the outlying suburbs, you're probably not going to come to every one of our workshops or or try to hit every field trip, because it may not be a need of yours too. And that's one thing we struggle with too, is because that demographic is so wide, we're not necessarily serving, one particular need. We're serving all these needs sort of scattered among 600-700 kids over the course of a year. And then, so that's why I'm jealous or envious of your academy, because it does feel like a more cohesive unit, that you're with these kids in a more engaging way or a more frequent manner than maybe we are.
I think you hit on a good point, because it's like, even as we've, grown outside of like our original program sites, we've had more of a mixture of kids and demographics, nuclear families, working class.
Yeah.
We're still, West Side, Pilsen, South Side. So, it is generally a low income demographic.
And that's always our target audience, right? I mean, we always want to serve those that need resources or that need advocacy, right? But I'm also not going to turn down a kid because him and his family or her and her family like the product that we put out there, right? Which is
right. And look, we get a lot of in like our league programs where it's a Saturday and we're at Garfield Park and, playing games, and there's just, grills going and stuff like that. There's a lot of, kids that do the national club circuit that are down there just having fun playing lacrosse with our kids. And it really doesn't matter. You're not, you're from the West Side, you're from the North Side, you're from the suburbs, it's like, no, you're a lacrosse player. And internally with the kids that we serve and the kids that you serve, the fact is, the one truth that I've learned is that every kid's different, and that every kid has a specific set of needs and circumstances, and challenges, whether it's academics or, picking up a ground ball. Every kid is different. And so I think, again, to where, I value our partnership. It's the idea of structure. As long as there's an umbrella where, like, these are the expectations, these are, the things that we do and that we value, I think you can have room for, every type of kid.
And I think that's a healthy mentality, because I did not have that initially. When we started to realize that more and more kids from maybe outside of the traditional neighborhoods we wanted to serve were coming in. And again, I think that's because it was word of mouth. We were putting out a good product. People wanted to be a part of it. Sometimes it's just simply the geography, right? Because where we're located in Dallas, we're the closest program to just, some neighborhoods that may be a little bit more upper middle class. So it was just kind of, we're a default league organization, right? Or member organization. What would that look like for you then, if you started to see, this is not maybe the right word in this case, sort of the gentrification of your programming?
Well, I wouldn't say that's happened because of where we run programs. It's going to limit who's going to come there.
You're still pretty deep into your
Yeah, we're in
neighborhood.
West Garfield Park. We're in, the South. But so when I say that there's kids from, the suburbs, where it tends to be in like a service type
Okay.
role, probably similar to like your
Yeah,
leadership
yeah, yeah.
board. I think how we've sort of approached that is, well, first of all, I should stop right there because in our Owls League program, we helped start a program at Lane Tech Academic Center, which is like a selective enrollment 7th, 8th grade program. We just helped them get started because they wanted lacrosse and we had some equipment.
I think I remember you telling me this. They were a little bit
Yeah,
of an
exactly. I
outlier.
mean, they do have, low income kids that, play on that team and go to that school. But for the most part, it is upper middle class, affluent kids that live on the north side, which is, by the way, where I live. So,
Hmm.
this is a segregated city, like most cities in the country. However, they pay a league fee, whereas other kids play for free. They pay like a team fee to play in just that spring league program. And people, one, you have this awesome cross community component where these kids that would never come to Garfield Park in their circumstance are there playing on a
Yeah.
Saturday. We're playing lacrosse against, kids from the west side and the south side. After the game, they're eating hot dogs together or whatever. And the second piece is a lot of those kids from that team and another team, Berwyn, which is in the suburbs. It's not like a rich suburb or anything like that, but they have like a park district team. They are in our league as well. So there's 4 Owls teams, 2 of these affiliate program team. So we have our school partners, and then we have our boys and girls club groups as well, along with St. Mal
Okay, gotcha.
as like our sort of league school partner network. But those 2 affiliate programs, like, yeah, they pay a fee, which is very light compared to what they would, out in suburbs or whatever. But it creates competition for our kids to improve, to kind of match those levels year over year. So we're not just playing against each other and playing scrimmages. Like our kids
Hmm.
want to play against different teams. And then once they're into academy, whether it's, middle schooler or high schooler, if they want to, I'm talking about Owls kids, if they want to, we get all kinds of offers to like, hey, if you, for these like more elite club teams, I'm not a big like club lacrosse guy, but we don't want to hold kids back that want to take their game to the next level. And that's honestly how you do that now. So, they get these offers to play on these teams, but it is a challenge to, you know,
Yeah,
get
I
them
hear you.
there, feed them, a lot of these kids are coming from places where it's hard to even get to school. So getting
Hmm.
to a tournament in Wisconsin is tough. So they have to be part of our academy program to get that kind of support. And it makes it easier because they've come through this funnel where we know their parents, we know their situation, we know that they need and where they live, and it's a smaller group, so we're able to fund it reasonably. And yeah, so again, we try to create pathways for any possible type of situation. Some kids, like we have a program that we started at Chicago Jesuit Academy, which is a all boys 3rd through 8th grade school in the Austin neighborhood, which is deep in the West Side and extremely challenged neighborhood. They are just from a standards, like school standards, school culture, they are just a machine. Like they turn those kids around. They have every kid has to play a sport every season or like drumline or some kind of enrichment program. So their after school program is awesome. We're part of their co-curricular program there. So every year, like I don't even have to think about them. They're gonna have 25 kids in our league program. Like we get them the gear, we provide coaching support, but they have teachers run it, and they're doing 4 practices a week, like during school sometimes. And but like I said, they're part of this other ecosystem year round where they're playing football, basketball, and we're part of their journey. In the spring, they come in for the most part, and then they go out, right? And we know that they're in safe hands. But we found kids that love lacrosse from that group that are interested in the academy program, and now we have a couple of them at Loyola Academy now. So it's about like identifying what their specific needs are and knowing when like, hey, this school just wants a seasonal league program to participate in, and we can add value there.
That's a good mentality to take. I don't know if I would be I don't know if I'd have the same willingness to have sort of this outlier program that's so much different than this, maybe the same
Yeah.
resource, maybe the resources that other kids or other schools are getting.
I have to explain it like that. I have to explain it like that though for it to make sense though, because if you saw them, you'd be like, okay, so, and this is still confusing. Like, so it's like your Owls, is that a team or well, who's Chicago Jazz? Who's St. Malachy? What is this? Like, we're just kind of like a governing body. And I think more and more, I think what Academy has allowed us to do is have this core group and core set of like, standards and a culture and something that it circumnavigates the entire year, and we can always sort of circle back to that. And I think it was
Yeah.
that revised program model where you had these are the 3 buckets. That's how we communicate it. Yes, we are still Owls, and it's a pretty bad acronym, but these are the buckets. Okay, and it's actually made as an administrator like my life so much easier. I think having the it's so important. There's a lot I would change going back, I'm sure, but the point being, you got to have those kind of pillars, like I know you guys have to.
That actually makes me feel really a lot better because you do have that same sort of range of programs where kids can engage kind of at their own, their own choosing in a lot of ways. And that's kind of one thing I've always struggled with is like, I really want to have this kid in our program 365 days a year, right? From K through 12 and then beyond. But, that's just not the
Yeah,
reality. And a lot of that just has to do with, you know, the,
I,
all kinds of other dynamic variables I can't control.
yeah. Well, look at it. I trust me, feel the same way. But I think it was um, a board member that was it was helpful because he was looking at he came in new, wanted to help, didn't have any pre-existing kind of thoughts around Owls programs. Just we did like kind of just a week-long exercise of like, what is this program? Do we need this? What does this program mean as far as the greater sort of picture and off ramps for these kids? And I think when it comes to like that Chicago Jesuit seasonal type of league program, or the kids that you're talking about that maybe you're not getting 365 a year, I think for certain kids they do need it year round, and it is their part of their identity and part of their goals and something they want to do. And for other, that doesn't mean it's less valuable for a kid that's just participating in that one of those seasonal programs. I think for those kids, they're using it. They're using that not as a stepping stone, but they're using that chapter or that season of play as a platform to move on, without you. For me, like I joked around with you about taking improv classes before, but like my mom made me do a theater program in 6th grade, and it was amazing. It was such a big part of my like whatever identity or middle school journey. I did it for like 1 or 2 years, but I still think about it now and think about how that shaped me. Right? It was an impactful experience, not because it was theater or lacrosse or whatever. It was because that director, this guy Dave Dees, that I'll never forget, was incredible.
Yeah.
Right? So it really is like, as long as they have nurturing adults around them, then you're part of that part of that tapestry, right?
That's a much more mature response to, I just want to like have all these kids play lacrosse all the time. But you are right. I do have those moments where I'm like, I want to have access to these kids more and more, but it certainly doesn't mean they're not getting value from us or they're not getting value from another organization or experience.
Isn't it just kind of more of an internal fear? Like, if I lose him, I'm going to lose that kid. We're going to lose, selfishly, like, participation numbers or hours or whatever. I have because it's not so much the kids that are playing another sport. It's like, are you just stopping because you don't want to do anything?
Yeah.
And I think there is I think there's so much. I'm all about trauma-informed program design and whatever, positive coaching lines, all that kind of stuff. But I would also say, if you don't have a parent, like my mom made me go to that theater program. Right? I didn't want to go every day. I definitely, in many ways, I was a lazy guy with like sports. Like, probably would have never gone if I had a choice. A lot of my kids in Chicago, because they're left to their own whatever after school. Mom,
Hmm.
dad's working, or, they have other stuff, other challenges in their life that they're dealing with, or like in some cases, like homeless, literally. Then if you're left to your own choice when you're 10, 11, 12, like oftentimes you're going to be like, well, I'm not going to that, or I'm just going to go do my own thing. So I think there is kind of a balance between, I'm not going to say forcing a kid to go, but many times I have those kids that I'm encouraging, or one of my coaches encouraging after school. It's why we have to have those people like waiting for them after school to get them, from that time when 3:30 bell rings or 3 o'clock bell rings, to get them to that, those informal hours between that time and 4:30. Like you have, it's an aggressive encouragement, let's say, and those kids might be just moping their way onto the field,
Yeah.
because they're tired and malnourished and whatever, or just feeling lazy that day. But at the end of that practice, almost 100% of the time, they feel much better.
You're definitely right on that first part. There is a level of selfishness of I want these kids to be a part of a program that myself and the people around me have built for kids. And it's not that I'm necessarily worried about like the numbers in a lot of ways. It's just I want kids to find value in what we do. And if they're like, well, I'm going to try this, I try not to take offense
Yeah.
to be like, oh, they're not finding our program valuable. And I tell that to our kids, like, enjoy the ride. I want you to be here and enjoy having fun with your teammates and being competitive, or just, goofing off because we're going to bring water balloons out. There is part of me that's so highly competitive that's like, I want to try to get all these kids to make sure they have the absolute greatest experience every single day. And for a kid to not have that, I'm like, what do I need to do better? Yeah, again, some of it is the numbers. We've been on this growth trend of adding more kids and more programs. It'll probably plateau pretty soon, as it probably should. And so I kind of like, because we don't have a lot of metrics to our success, right? In a lot of ways. So more kids is better, right? Well, not always, but I don't have a lot else to go on sometimes.
I think both things can be true. I think, looking at it in those buckets, right? Like, I don't think, yeah, ultimately, I think, 2, 3 years from now, we want like 200 kids in our academy program, maybe 1,000 kids reached through our outreach programs, and that many of those are going to be one-offs. So I don't put a lot of value into those outreach numbers. But unfortunately, for the business that we're in, which is like donor based, there are donors that are like, well, I don't have more kids, like organizations like ours, there are, we're doing pretty good, especially in the lacrosse space, like as far as impact, because we care about it so much. Lacrosse people are crazy. Like, we're crazy people.
I do want to ask you, we've talked a lot about that kind of in that growth mentality, or, adding numbers, whatever, adding programs. How have you managed that balance between just starting as like, I'm here because I'm a coach and I like coaching and I want to coach 20 kids and really be involved in all these kids' lives, win some games, but teach like the things that are really important to me, versus now running in an organization that's working with hundreds of kids? Like, what's that transition been like for you? Because I've struggled with it.
Very tough. I like to be close to the fire, and
Yeah.
I love being on the field. I think, pre-refined a program model. I was just hustling. I had a bag of gear and a forerunner, just flying around trying to get trying to get kids going. And the only thing I knew was that I was good at engaging with those kids, communicating with them. And I don't think there's that much of a generational gap, with me and the kids I was speaking with. And because I did start it when I was like 23 or whatever.
Mhm.
And it was just scary, when then you grow and you get more funding and you have a more active and standardized board of directors. They're saying, stop setting up cones and collecting equipment, that we don't need, and all those types of things, because you need to go raise money, right? Which is 100% valid.
Yeah.
And when you realize that improving the organization, improving the funding resources, and working on all that back of the house stuff is actually going to make a deeper impact on the kids ultimately, and stop making it about like you and your needs to like engage with kids and have those war stories. I found, sort of value in that, and I think that is so crucial. At the same time, I'm still getting out on the fields, I'm still doing those things, but having a system, right? And having support and having a model, I'm able to say, you know, these are the kids that I'm going to focus on working. So right now for me, I am running the academy program along with our amazing program manager, Caitlin, who's, you know, shifted to supporting the academy program too. Whereas before she was just working our bigger outreach and league programs, right? Pre-COVID, but now we've had to adapt, right? And shift to that. And I think, you know, for me, there are ways where I think the sweet spot, and it's starting to happen, where there are programs happening and I'm not there. I think that is so gratifying, where I'm like, this is so cool. Like, look at these coaches are running it and I'm like eating a calzone. Like,
Right. You're like, I'm going to be in
I'm
bed
not
at
sitting in
9.
my ivory tower laughing and twisting my mustache, but like, I think it's let other people lead isn't so important. And I really struggle with that. And if like Caitlin or any of my volunteers heard this, they would laugh. Like, yeah, let someone else talk.
Right.
But you know, it's my baby, and I think you need to find that balance because now I can, you know, drop in on a league program and drop in and connect with kids. And, you know, I think those relationships are less and less. I know who all the third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders are, but I try to kind of be there at the beginning and drop in and encourage. And then when it comes to like the long-term stuff, when it starts to get complicated with like college choice, you know, that one of those kids that did emerge from that first middle school group just got a full-time job through one of our community partners after playing club lacrosse and majoring in engineering at Ohio State. Like,
Nice.
those are the really cool projects that I like working on because they're so individualized. The stress is less. You know, I don't feel like I have to go call every single kid now. And
Yeah.
because we have funding, we, you know, can have staff to work through that stuff. That's what it's all about, is letting other people lead is just important.
And that's the 100% the right mentality. And my mentality was, I just like coaching. Like I didn't take over the ED job because I liked fundraising.
Yeah.
I took over because I like coaching. And then, like you said earlier, that's not actually my job. It was sort of heartbreaking. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Like I can't be on the field all the time or counting, you know, and not that I love it, but it's like, I can't be in the locker counting cleats and matching, you know, gloves and arm pads. But we're now to the point like you guys were really strong staff, really strong coaches, volunteers, where I'm like, I guess I can go home early, or like I can go make a run because I haven't eaten all day. So I'm going to go run out and then maybe I'll hang out and chat with parents to part. You know, it's just like, I don't,
And you feel like so guilty.
Oh, I know. It's so brutal.
Like also most of the people are like thrilled.
Oh, I can't imagine.
that you left.
That's actually I hadn't thought about that. I wonder what my coaches are like. Oh, we can actually do real drills now or whatever, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So let's do this, man. Let's maybe wrap up, but I did want to throw out, are we going to do some Bridge v OWLS?
Oh yeah.
We did Jeopardy last night and that was a lot of fun.
I got to say, I think you might have to MC because we do charades and
charades is cool.
Yeah. I'm like hogging the mic a lot. So you probably learned from this pod. But no, absolutely. I think, what are we thinking? Middle schoolers, high schoolers?
I think, well, how many high school kids do you have? I
could get 10 of them. I mean, we have 25 sort of in our academy umbrella. But I probably get 10. Yeah, I mean.
I think we shoot for high school then. Middle school is tougher for us just because we've kind of told the kids like their season's over. We kind of did our last Zoom. So I think just from a timeline.
Would it really matter though if it was like 7th, 8th grade, 9th graders, 10th graders?
No, that's a good point. We could just make it open to whoever has time. Yeah. Hey, Sam, thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. And this was fun.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Thanks for having me. Best of luck to your Bridge family through these uncertain times, as we keep saying. So, no, I really appreciate the time.
That was fun.